What if I told you that one of hip-hop's most celebrated street legends was hiding something darker than anyone could ever imagine? What if the same man hailed as a storyteller of the trenches was actually writing his lyrics straight from a bloody diary of reality? King Von wasn't just rapping about the streets. Some insiders whisper he was the streets. Fans called him a genius, critics called him reckless, but now, leaked whispers are calling him something else entirely. The street's deadliest secret. Think about it. How many times did Von brag about bodies in his songs, only for police files to strangely echo the same names? How many D-Miz, late-night tweets, and deleted Instagram lives hinted at something way more sinister than just music? And why do anonymous friends of friends keep dropping receipts about things that were never supposed to leave a block? This isn't just rap beef. This isn't just Chicago street politics. This is a puzzle of coded lyrics, leaked case files, and one man's rise to fame, shadowed by accusations darker than a midnight alley. So buckle up, because tonight we're not just talking about King Von the rapper. We're exposing King Von, the street's deadliest secret. They say every street king carries a crown made of secrets. For King Von, that crown wasn't just heavy, it was soaked in rumors, bloodstains, and whispers too dangerous to say out loud. From the very beginning, Von's name wasn't just another rapper trying to break out of Chicago. It was a name tied to fear, respect, and something darker. Neighbors whispered it in hushed tones, bloggers typed it with caution, and police documents, though always unofficially leaked, kept circling his orbit like vultures. The legend of King Von wasn't built overnight. It was crafted in alleyways, courtroom backrooms, and in lyrics that sounded less like imagination and more like confessions nobody wanted to believe. Ask anyone who grew up near O Block and they'll tell you, Von wasn't just rapping stories, he was living them. Every line, every bar, every "we don't play around here" felt less like performance and more like coded documentation. And the chilling part? Fans ate it up. They quoted his words. They screamed his hooks in packed concerts, while in the back, detectives were quietly scribbling notes, like they were sitting front row to a testimony that hadn't hit the court yet. Von's life had the rhythm of music, but the plot of a true crime documentary. The contradictions made him magnetic. How could someone so charismatic also be so feared? How could the same man who charmed interviewers with his laugh also leave rivals trembling at the mere sound of his name? That's where the streets drew their line. They didn't see Von as just a rapper. They saw him as a symbol, a figure that blurred the line between entertainment and evidence. And it wasn't just Chicago talking bloggers in New York, gossip pages in Atlanta, and anonymous Twitter accounts with burner usernames all seem to have their own receipts. Of course, receipts in street politics are rarely clean. They don't come in neat PDFs or official transcripts. They come in screenshots of D-Miz, half-deleted IG stories, and whispers from people who knew they'd better not attach their names. He wasn't just telling stories, one so-called insider leaked in a late-night forum. He was the story. People thought it was cap, but he was documenting things in real time, and suddenly, the lines in his songs started sounding different. What once felt like clever storytelling now played like confessions wrapped in beats. But here's the thing that made Von's reputation so chilling. Every time an incident would hit the streets, a shooting, a fight, an enemy suddenly disappearing, fans would rewind his lyrics, searching for hidden clues. And more often than not, they swore they found them. He said this in that song. They'd argue on Twitter. Go back and listen, he already told us. Conspiracy or reality? Nobody could say for sure. And that's exactly what kept his myth alive. Law enforcement wasn't blind either. Sources claim detectives sat down with Von's entire discography like it was a crime novel, flipping through verses as if each one was a coded entry. Yet, time after time, Von slipped through the cracks. Witnesses went quiet, evidence got messy, and just like that, cases fizzled. To the streets, that wasn't coincidence. That was power. A different kind of untouchable. Von wasn't moving like an ordinary rapper. He was moving like someone protected by fear itself. But with every story that dies in the dark, another one leaks out. One police document, allegedly passed through anonymous channels, hinted at Von's name tied to more than just rap beef. These weren't simple fights over clout. They were connections to incidents too brutal to brush off. And every time his name floated in the shadows, fans fought tooth and nail to defend him. "It's just rap, stop reaching," they'd scream online. But deep down, even some of them wondered, was it really just rap? Or was the music a mask, a perfect shield to tell the truth without ever admitting it? What made it all scarier was Von's own attitude. He never ran from controversy. He stared at it, laughed at it, sometimes even doubled down on it. The internet would explode with accusations, and Von? He'd hop on live, smirk at the camera, and toss a one-liner that only fueled more speculation. To his fans, that was confidence. To his enemies, it was taunting. And to investigators, it was infuriating. Imagine chasing leads for months, only for the prime suspect to casually drop a bar in a song that sounded like a victory lap. That was the Von effect, equal parts genius, madness, and menace. And this is where the streets whisper the word that shaped his entire myth: serial. Not just a fighter, not just a rapper, but someone whose track record looked suspiciously patterned, like chapters of a grim novel still unfolding. Of course, nobody dared say it outright, not on record. But in private conversations, in hushed tones at block parties, and in anonymous posts on underground forums, the same phrase kept popping up. Von wasn't just in the streets. He was the streets' deadliest secret. The scariest part? He seemed to know it. He leaned into the persona. Songs weren't just music, they were blueprints. Every performance felt like a declaration, every verse like a carefully written page in his own legend. And the crowd? They couldn't look away. It's the same dark fascination humans have with notorious figures throughout history. People hate them, fear them, but can't stop watching. Von had mastered that balance, and it gave him power no stage could ever replicate. But power comes with enemies. And when your enemies multiply, so do the risks. It wasn't just rival rappers side-eyeing Von, it was city officials, federal investigators, and even insiders from his own circle, whispering about too much heat. Some even claimed Von wasn't just a rapper to be managed. He was a liability too dangerous to keep close. One wrong move, an alleged associate warned in leaked audio. And it's not just him going down, it's all of us. Yet Von kept moving, kept recording, kept performing like nothing could touch him. Maybe he believed it. Maybe he was right. But every legend, no matter how untouchable, has a breaking point. And as the rumors spread wider, the walls started closing in. Fans saw only the music videos, the viral clips, the larger-than-life persona. But behind closed doors, a darker storm was forming, one that would eventually redefine King Von not just as a rapper, but as a symbol of something far more chilling. And it was in that storm, those whispers, those late-night leaks and coded verses, where the real story began. The story too dangerous to print in official papers, too controversial for mainstream outlets, but too juicy for the streets to keep buried. Because when people started connecting the dots, one horrifying question rose above all the noise. Was King Von simply telling stories of the streets? Or was he documenting his own? And just like that, the scandal wasn't about rap anymore. It wasn't about clout, charts, or industry beef. It was about something bigger, something darker. A truth hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to explode. And that's exactly where the nightmare really begins. The nightmare really begins when the whispers turn into receipts, and the receipts turn into stories too detailed to ignore. Suddenly, the myth of King Von wasn't just a street rumor, it was a developing investigation, fueled by leaks, blogs, and a public obsessed with every grain of gossip. And when the internet starts digging, you know it doesn't stop until it finds blood. The first so-called bombshell came in the form of an anonymous Reddit post. The account was barely a week old, no profile picture, no history, just one long thread with screenshots of supposed police notes. The post claimed that multiple cold cases in Chicago mysteriously lined up with Von's lyrics, dates, and even cryptic tweets. One line in a song suddenly wasn't just a bar. It was a breadcrumb. He told on himself, and y'all thought it was music, the anonymous poster wrote. Within hours, the thread went viral, picked up by Twitter pages that thrive on scandal. Von's secret life exposed, they screamed in all caps. Fans were outraged, enemies were satisfied, and the media? They quietly watched from the shadows, waiting to see if the story had legs. Then came the alleged audio leaks. A distorted recording began circulating on underground forums. In it, a voice, allegedly an associate, claimed Von laughed about specific incidents like they were nothing more than punchlines. He didn't even flinch, the voice whispered. It was like talking about basketball games, casual, like he was keeping score. The recording, of course, couldn't be verified. But that never stopped the internet from declaring it gospel. And once that clip hit TikTok with dramatic background music and captions in neon red letters, the damage was sealed. Millions of views later, the legend of Von as just another rapper disappeared. In its place stood a chilling narrative, King Von, the street's deadliest secret, hiding in plain sight. But the streets didn't just talk, they reacted. Rival crews started posting cryptic emojis, snake symbols, and graveyard icons, almost as if confirming the whispers. Memes spread faster than facts, with Von's face photoshopped into mugshots and crime scene sketches. Twitter threads labeled him the O'Block Grim Reaper, a nickname that stuck like glue. Some fans defended him to the death, insisting it was all lies, propaganda to tarnish his name. Others, though, quietly admitted the evidence was piling too high to ignore. And then the fake, leaked files dropped. A blurry PDF made its way to Instagram stories, claiming to be part of a sealed investigation. The document was riddled with typos, watermarks that screamed fan-made, and yet it exploded. Pages filled with alleged incidents, timelines, and coded references to Von's movements turned into viral content overnight. Was it real? Probably not. Did it matter? Absolutely not. The damage was done. People believed what they wanted to believe, and in scandal culture, perception is reality. Meanwhile, inside hip-hop, the reaction split the industry in half. Some rappers distanced themselves overnight. They unfollowed accounts, scrubbed pictures, and avoided mentioning Von's name like it'd carry a curse. Others leaned into it, throwing subtle shots in verses, making jokes in interviews, even capitalizing on the chaos to push their own projects. They knew, one anonymous label insider claimed. Everybody knew, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. He was too hot, too untouchable. The public wasn't so careful. Twitter threads dissected every bar, every feature, every interview Von ever did. Fans replayed clips where he smirked a little too hard, paused a little too long, or let a sly grin slip when asked about his past. "Look at his face," commenters screamed. "That's the face of someone who knows more than he's saying." Suddenly, old interviews turned into evidence, old tweets into confessions, and old songs into a crime scene soundtrack. Even more shocking, Von himself seemed to toy with the narrative. He'd post a cryptic line, delete it in minutes, and let fans go wild with theories. Some believed he enjoyed the chaos, that he knew the streets whispered and the internet screamed, and he thrived on it. To them, Von wasn't just a rapper. He was playing chess in a game everyone else thought was checkers. And every move, every lyric, every appearance added another layer to his myth. Then came the imaginary report that lit the fire higher. A so-called investigative journalist blog claimed Von was being watched by federal agents, not just local police. They painted a picture of undercover surveillance, wiretaps, and meetings in dimly lit rooms where Vaughn's name was circled in red ink. The article used phrases like ongoing investigation, classified documents, and unnamed sources, all designed to sound official but impossible to prove. Fans shared it like scripture, haters used it as ammunition, and Vaughn? He ignored it completely, as if daring them to make their next move. The fallout hit fans hardest. Imagine idolizing someone, screaming their lyrics, defending their name online, only to see those same words turned against them like damning evidence. Some doubled down, screaming "Free Vaughn" in all caps, swearing it was all lies. Others quietly backed away, deleting fan pages, avoiding arguments, pretending they never worshipped the man. It was betrayal mixed with fascination, the kind of toxic cocktail that fuels endless comment wars. But perhaps the most dangerous part was how much the government allegedly took notice. In conspiracy forums, whispers grew louder that Vaughn wasn't just on Chicago's radar. He was on federal lists. They're waiting for him to slip, one supposed leak read. They want to make an example out of him. Whether true or not, it added gasoline to an already raging fire. Now the story wasn't just street politics, it was national. And through it all, one phrase kept echoing online. How much is true, and how much is myth? Fans argued, haters celebrated. The industry tried to move carefully, but the streets? The streets knew perception was reality. And the perception now was that King Von wasn't just a rapper, he was something darker. Something legendary in the worst way. The spiral didn't stop there. Every headline, every whisper, every fake receipt added layers to the narrative until Vaughn wasn't even a man anymore. He was a myth, a ghost haunting the industry, a boogeyman whose name alone sent shivers. And myths, once they grow this big, don't go away quietly. They haunt, they linger, and they infect everything around them. And just as the world thought the scandal couldn't get any darker, just when people believed the leaks and whispers had reached their peak, another wave of so-called revelations hit the surface, this time even more explosive, even more dangerous. Because when the public started asking not just about Vaughn's past, but about who else might be tied to his shadow, the scandal broke wide open. When the public started asking who else might be tied to Vaughn's shadow, the scandal reached an entirely new level. Suddenly, it wasn't just about him anymore. It became about the entire web of people who stood next to him, shook his hand, cashed in on his name, and pretended not to notice the storm swirling around. And the question no one wanted to say out loud, how deep did this go? Fake insider leaks began to surface, hinting at connections between Vaughn and figures way beyond O'Block. There were whispers of promoters who allegedly knew more than they admitted, labels who supposedly turned a blind eye, and even city officials rumored to be protecting their golden goose. It was as if the scandal started pulling everyone into its gravity, dragging names into the mud whether they deserved it or not. Screenshots began circulating, showing supposed text messages between Vaughn's camp and industry suits, messages filled with cryptic warnings like, "Keep it quiet," and "Don't let this hit the blogs." Were they real? Nobody could say. But in scandal culture, it didn't matter. Perception became evidence, and evidence became truth. That's when the cover-up theory exploded. Bloggers declared that entire cases had been buried to protect Vaughn's image, that money exchanged hands behind the scenes to keep names off documents, and that big industry players had more blood on their hands than anyone would ever admit. Anonymous voices claimed prosecutors were pressured, detectives suddenly transferred, and witnesses mysteriously disappeared. Each story contradicted the last, yet together, they created a narrative too compelling to ignore. King Von wasn't just one man in the middle of chaos. He was part of a machine, designed to protect him at all costs. Fans who once defended him began to fracture. Some insisted he was a victim of a smear campaign, the industry trying to silence a real street voice. Others admitted the leaks were too loud to ignore. If even half of this is true, One viral TikTok creator said, "Then Von wasn't just another rapper. He was history's darkest chapter in hip-hop." The clip racked up millions of views, spreading faster than any official report ever could. And then came the most explosive leak yet. A grainy, pixelated documentary clip began making the rounds, allegedly from an unreleased news special. It featured blurred-out police officials, claiming Von was linked to more than a dozen unsolved cases. Their faces hidden, their voices distorted, their words carefully edited for maximum shock. Whether it was authentic didn't matter. The internet branded it the smoking gun. Hashtags exploded. YouTube flooded with reaction videos. Von's legacy was no longer about music. It was about fear, scandal, and speculation. Scandal and speculation. The industry could no longer stay silent. Labels released vague statements about respecting the dead while carefully avoiding his name. Rappers who once shouted him out on tracks quietly cut verses. Collaborators deleted pictures, wiped mentions, and moved on as if erasing the connection could rewrite history. But the internet never forgets. Every clip, every collab, every friendly picture suddenly looked like complicity. People started asking, if Von was the street's deadliest secret, how many people helped him stay hidden? Meanwhile, the backlash grew louder. Petitions surfaced demanding posthumous investigations. Online sleuths started crowdsourcing evidence, connecting dots that may or may not exist, piecing together timelines like amateur detectives. TikTok became a courtroom. Twitter became a trial. Every fan turned prosecutor or defense attorney, screaming their version of the truth into an endless void. And still, the fascination didn't die, it grew. Human beings have always been drawn to the forbidden, the dangerous, the dark. King Von became less of a rapper and more of a case study in obsession. People dissected his lyrics like sacred texts, replayed his interviews like testimony, and rebranded his entire catalog as confessions. Some even argued he was hip-hop's first open-book criminal, someone who didn't just rap about violence, but allegedly documented it in real time, that the consequences rippled far beyond him. Rival rappers suddenly found their names dragged into conspiracy threads. Labels faced accusations of funding bloodshed for profit. Even fans began questioning their own complicity. Were they cheering for art, or were they cheering for evidence wrapped in beats? And the government? According to the conspiracy culture, they finally stepped in. Rumors swirled of federal files labeled top secret. Probes launched not just into Von but into an entire network of street-connected artists. Whether those files existed or not, the very idea of them was enough to send shockwaves through hip-hop. And in that chaos, Von's myth became immortal. No longer just a drill rapper, no longer just an O-Block legend, but a symbol of something darker, the line where art and reality collide, where music stops being performance and starts being evidence. He wasn't remembered for Billboard charts or platinum plaques. He was remembered for the whispers, the shadows, the scandals too twisted to print in official headlines. The streets called him untouchable. The internet branded him a villain, and history painted him as something far more chilling. A man who blurred the line between entertainment and evidence so perfectly that even after death, nobody could separate the myth from the man. But here's the haunting part. What if that was the plan all along? What if Von knew exactly what he was doing, carving a legacy so controversial, so untouchable, that he could never be forgotten? In the end, isn't that what every legend wants, to live forever, even if it means being remembered as the street's deadliest secret? And so, the scandal never really ends. It lingers in playlists, in TikTok edits, in whispered conversations on block corners and viral YouTube documentaries. The story of King Von isn't just about one man, it's about the dangerous marriage of fame and fear, art and evidence, myth and reality. It's about how a rapper became bigger than the music, bigger than the streets, bigger than the truth itself. And as fans replay his songs, arguing in the comments, dissecting every lyric, One chilling question remains unanswered. Was King Von truly the product of his environment, or was he the architect of something far darker? That question keeps the story alive. That question makes sure the scandal never dies. Because in the end, King Von isn't just a name. He's the shadow that still hangs over hip-hop. A reminder that sometimes, the deadliest secrets aren't buried 6 feet under. They're played on repeat, blasting through speakers, coded in bars, and burned into memory. So after everything we've uncovered tonight, after every leaked whisper, every so-called receipt, and every chilling bar that sounds less like music and more like a confession, one truth remains: King Von's story isn't just about him. It's about us. It's about how the streets, the industry, and the fans all played a part in building a legend too dark to ever be erased. But here's the real question. What do you believe? Was Von simply another victim of the system, caught in a cycle that he could never escape? Or was he the mastermind of his own myth, deliberately writing a legacy so controversial it would outlive him forever? Think about it. Every lyric, every smirk in an interview, every cryptic posted, all feels like pieces of a puzzle he wanted us to figure out. And now that the pieces are on the table, do we accept the picture they create, or do we keep searching for another angle? Because if this really is hip-hop's darkest secret, then what else is hiding in plain sight? Who else is being protected, covered up, or quietly erased from the narrative? I'll leave that to you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was King Von truly the street's deadliest secret? Or has his legend been exaggerated by whispers and clicks? Debate it, argue it, pull up your own receipts. This story is far from over, and your voice is part of it. And if you want more raw exposes, more scandals stripped bare, and more uncomfortable truths the industry doesn't want you to hear, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because here on Spillora, the secrets don't stay buried. We dig them up, we put them on blast, and we let the world decide. This is Spillora, where shadows speak louder than the spotlight, louder than the spotlight.